Good morning, evening, or night. Wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Wednesday, 21st May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Israel's military drew international condemnation after troops fired warning shots at 25 diplomats visiting Jenin in the West Bank. Canada, the UK, France, and Mexico demanded a transparent investigation into the incident, while the Israel Defense Forces claimed the diplomats strayed from an approved route in an active combat zone. Prime Minister Netanyahu further escalated tensions by stating that Israel would control all of Gaza by the end of the offensive. Pressure is mounting on Israel to ease both its military actions and aid. Blockade in Gaza, with aid organizations decrying the insufficient levels of food and medicine entering the region. Though Israel claimed to have allowed 100 aid trucks into Gaza, UN officials reported that the aid had not yet reached those in need. The attacks in Gaza have resulted in at least 82 deaths. The Supreme Court ruled that the government's decision to terminate the head of Shin Bet's tenure was made through an improper and unlawful process. The court found no factual basis for Rodenbach's dismissal, citing irregularities and the lack of a formal hearing. Israel's Iron Dome defense system has been crucial in intercepting rockets and missiles fired by Iran and allied militant groups. In the United Kingdom, a proposed bill seeks a comprehensive inquiry into the UK's role in the West Asia conflict since October 2023, following a letter from Jeremy Corbyn to the UK Prime Minister. Across Europe, broadcasters are questioning the Eurovision Song Contest voting system. This follows Israel's entry, receiving an overwhelming public vote, yet narrowly missing victory. Meanwhile, in the United States, U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee voiced strong disapproval of the leaders of the UK, France, and Canada for their condemnation of Israel's new military offensive in Gaza. United Kingdom, the UK is grappling with surging inflation, hitting a yearly high in April due to escalating domestic energy and water bills. Consequently, Prime Minister Keir Starmer is facing renewed demands to reinstate the annual winter fuel subsidy for pensioners. Arms exports to Israel are under investigation, with MPs poised to quiz ministers about their potential use in Gaza. Former prisoners are appealing to the Prime Minister to help secure the release of pro-democracy campaigner Jimmy Lai. A report reveals that British theatres are facing an unsustainable situation due to rising costs, dwindling support, and aging infrastructure, requiring government intervention. In healthcare, a UK study suggests that providing additional cancer scans for women with dense breasts could save 700 lives annually through early detection. A third suspect has been charged with arson related to fires targeting properties linked to Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Retailer M&S estimates the cost of a recent cyber attack at $400 million because it is still disrupting their business. Musician Chris Brown was released on $6.70 million bail following allegations of assaulting a music producer in London. The Institute for Fiscal Studies, IFS, has determined that Sure Start Children's centres provide £2 centres for every £1 sterling spent. Rapper Kneecap member Liam Ohana has been charged with a terrorism offence for allegedly displaying a banned Hezbollah flag at a London gig. Russia, Ukraine, conflict, and international relations. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz anticipates the war in Ukraine will persist for the foreseeable future, while Defense Minister Boris Pistorius is pushing for enhanced measures to cut off Russia's financial channels. The Russian leader recently visited the Kursk region, marking his first visit since Moscow claimed to have ousted Ukrainian forces last month, a claim disputed by Kyiv. President Trump has apparently rescinded support for a European initiative aimed at imposing new sanctions on Russia, expressing interest in pursuing business deals with the country. European Union. Climate breakdown and wildlife loss are contributing to an intensifying chocolate crisis within the EU, as cocoa is one of 6 key commodities predominantly sourced from countries susceptible to environmental risks. China is solidifying its position as a global economic and technological powerhouse. In a strategic move, China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan convened in Beijing, agreeing to extend the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor (CPC) to enhance communication despite existing tensions between Islamabad and Kabul. China's dominance in the critical minerals sector, essential for clean energy technologies, is also growing, raising concerns about potential export restrictions that could impact global supply chains. In space exploration, China's Tianwen-2 mission seeks to explore and collect samples from a near-Earth asteroid, mirroring the ambitions of similar US and Japanese endeavors. The nation is also engaged in ambitious infrastructure projects, including the construction of the world's tallest dam, the development of robot-made missiles, and pioneering research on new bacteria strains aboard the Tiangong space station. However, China faces a complex landscape of internal and external pressures. Target, a major U.S. retailer, had its annual forecast cut due to the adverse effects of tariffs and boycotts, highlighting the reliance of such companies on Chinese goods. A temporary tariff truce between Beijing and Washington is offering some respite to Chinese EV battery manufacturers, grappling with weak domestic demand and overcapacity. In Shanghai and Hangzhou, authorities are investigating elder care company Shanyuhai for potential illegal collection of public deposits. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has also voiced criticism of President Donald Trump's Golden Dome program, claiming it undermines global strategic balance and stability. In South Korea, anti-China narratives propagated by far-right groups have raised safety concerns among Chinese nationals and ethnic Korean Chinese residents in Seoul. A security breach occurred in Taiwan, where an individual entered by sea and remained undetected for over a month, exposing vulnerabilities amid ongoing gray zone threats attributed to Beijing. Despite these challenges, British firms continue to express commitment to the Chinese market. Domestically, Chengdu, known as China's happiest city, is experiencing a population surge and a booming real estate market, fueled by an influx of workers from major coastal cities. A city renowned for its vegetable farming expertise is set to establish a smart agriculture center in the UAE, aiming to develop farming techniques suitable for harsh desert environments. In Fenjiang County, the roof of a nearly 600-year-old tower unexpectedly collapsed. Furthermore, a new study led by China-born biochemist Yang Kaiting has revealed that high-dose radiotherapy can potentially worsen cancer outcomes. Pakistan and Afghanistan are now linked more closely to China through the expansion of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPC, following a trilateral meeting in Beijing aimed at fostering improved communication amid existing differences between Islamabad and Kabul. China is also extending support to Pakistan and advocating for dialogue with India to alleviate mounting regional tensions. The United States is grappling with the implications of China's growing economic and technological influence. Target's reduced financial outlook is a direct consequence of tariffs and boycotts, reflecting the company's dependence on Chinese-made goods. The increasing concentration of critical minerals for clean energy in China raises concerns about potential supply chain vulnerabilities. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has also publicly criticized President Donald Trump's Golden Dome program, asserting that it destabilizes the global strategic balance. South Korea is seeing the rise of anti-China sentiment driven by far-right groups, leading to safety concerns among Chinese nationals and ethnic Korean Chinese residents in Seoul. As the South Korea election approaches, Taiwan experienced a security lapse when an individual entered the island by sea and remained undetected for over a month, highlighting vulnerabilities in the face of gray zone threats originating from Beijing. The United Arab Emirates will soon host a smart agriculture center built by a Chinese city known for vegetable farming, with the goal of developing farming techniques suitable for the region's harsh desert climate. India is being urged by China to engage in dialogue with Pakistan, amid China's offer of support to Pakistan and amidst escalating regional tensions. Pakistan is under fire regarding its cybercrime law, which rights organizations claim is being used to stifle dissent, especially from journalists, under the guise of combating online misinformation. The death penalty for Pakistani-American Zahir Jaffer was upheld concerning the 2021 murder of Nur Muqaddam in Islamabad, a case arising from Muqaddam's refusal of Jaffer's marriage proposal. In Balochistan province, a suspected suicide attack targeted a school bus, leading to the deaths of at least 3 children and 2 adults and wounding 38 others. The attack, involving a suicide car bomb, occurred near Zero Point in Khuzestar. Pakistan has accused India of orchestrating the attack. A recent survey revealed a substantial increase in popularity for Pakistan's army chief, General Asim Munir, following a conflict with India, with 93% of those surveyed reporting a more favorable opinion. This surge in support has bolstered the military's influence and his subsequent promotion. Shifting focus to China, Pakistan and China have reached an agreement to strengthen their trade ties and maintain close communication, with a focus on collaboration in sectors such as trade, investment, agriculture, and industrial development. Turning to India, Pakistani authorities have accused India of being behind a suspected suicide attack on a school bus in Balochistan. In Amritsar, BSF troops apprehended a Pakistani intruder after the individual crossed the international border and approached the border fence on May 20. Japan's agriculture minister Taku Ito resigned following controversy over his remarks about receiving rice from supporters instead of purchasing it, amid concerns about record-high rice prices. Economic uncertainty and speculation that the Bank of Japan may reduce bond purchases are affecting Japanese debt. Japan and U.S. finance officials, including Finance Minister Katsunobu Kato and U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, affirmed their support for market-determined foreign exchange rates without specifying currency targets. Tourist arrivals in Japan rose 28.5% in April, reaching a record 3.9 million, bringing the year-to-date total to 14.4 million. Consequently, Japan is re-evaluating its foreign driver licensing system, particularly due to the ease of obtaining permits. Exports to the U.S. decreased nearly 2% in April due to tariff increases implemented by President Donald Trump. Toyota Motor Corp plans to launch its new RAV4 model in Japan before the end of 2025. Despite advocating for a fossil fuel phase-out in Asia, Japan is investing significantly in LNG projects. Japan hosted a major arms exhibition featuring railguns, missiles, and lasers, signaling a growing emphasis on overseas defense capabilities, according to Defense Minister Jen Nakatani. A dating app scam targeting disabled individuals has surfaced, where victims are lured with fake dates and then presented with inflated bar bills. One visually impaired man lost approximately $5,000. A 56-year-old man died, and 2 passengers were injured when a train window shattered after being struck by a pipe-frame structure blown by strong winds in Nagano. Russia's Bureau Intelligence is accused by the UK of hacking border security cameras near critical European sites. These sites include border crossings and military installations. The alleged aim was to disrupt Western aid to Ukraine. Russia claimed to have expelled Ukrainian troops from the Kursk region in late April. They called it the largest incursion since World War II. President Vladimir Putin then visited the Kursk region. The Kremlin rejects a ceasefire as a precondition for peace talks. Putin's attempts to normalize relations with the U.S. remain uncertain. Brazil is allegedly being used by Russian intelligence to assemble deep cover operatives. Turning to Ukraine, Andriy Portnov, a former aide to Viktor Yanukovych, was assassinated. Historically, Armenia has relied on Russian weaponry in its conflict with Azerbaijan. India is currently dealing with multifaceted issues, ranging from internal security operations to international trade disputes. Security forces have intensified operations against Maoist rebels in Chhattisgarh, resulting in the death of 27 rebels, including Maoist chief Nambala Keshav Rao, also known as Basavaraju, with a goal to defeat the decades-old insurgency by next year. Concurrently, India is seeking to impose retaliatory tariffs worth $7.60 billion on the United States, targeting steel and aluminum in response to U.S. tariffs. Politically, Sanjay Raut criticized the central government for sending parliamentary delegations to unrelated countries following Operation Sindoor, dismissing it as mere showmanship, while fashion businesses are capitalizing on the conflict with Pakistan by selling military-themed merchandise related to Operation Sindoor. In conservation, the lion population in Gujarat's Gir sanctuary is thriving, reaching nearly 900 after facing near extinction in 1913. In literature, Banu Mushtaq, a 77-year-old Indian activist, won the International Booker Prize, becoming the first Kannada language author to achieve this recognition, with her translator Deepa Bhasthi playing a pivotal role. An Indian diplomat was confirmed to not be a part of a delegation that came under Israeli army fire in Jenin. The United States finds itself embroiled in a trade dispute with India, which is seeking to impose $7.60 billion in retaliatory tariffs on U.S. steel and aluminum in response to U.S. tariffs. Further, former President Trump claimed to have resolved India-Pakistan hostilities through trade during a meeting with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. In Israel-Palestine, the Palestinian Authority's Ministry of Foreign Affairs holds Israel responsible for an incident where a delegation came under Israeli army fire in Jenin. An Indian diplomat was confirmed to not be a part of this delegation. Pakistan is indirectly affected by the actions of other nations. Indian fashion businesses are capitalizing on tensions and conflict by selling military-themed merchandise with slogans related to Operation Sindoor. Furthermore, former U.S. President Trump claimed to have resolved India-Pakistan hostilities through trade during a meeting with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa recently met with former U.S. President Trump, during which Trump asserted that he had ended India-Pakistan hostilities through trade. South Africa faced an unexpected diplomatic hurdle when President Trump confronted President Cyril Ramaphosa with unsubstantiated claims of a genocide against white farmers during a White House visit, presenting videos and images alleging racism. Trump's presentation included a video falsely purporting to show black South Africans discussing genocide, and he falsely asserted that white South African farmers were being murdered based on their race. Hoping to ease tensions after Trump's white genocide claims, Ramaphosa brought golfers Ernie Els and Retief Guzan to the meeting. Simultaneously, the country's budget is grappling with a shortfall of over $430 stemming from cuts in foreign aid by the Trump administration. Adding to the complexities, a Baptist ministry in North Carolina has committed to resettling Afrikaners from South Africa, citing religious obligations, though their refugee status remains a point of contention. The United States has accepted a luxury jet from Qatar to serve as Trump's Air Force One, sparking ethical and security debates. Donald Trump announced he will soon decide on taking Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac public. The Trump White House is seeking Supreme Court protection for Elon Musk's Doge, arguing it's a presidential advisory body exempt from transparency mandates. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang has denounced US chip export controls as a failure, claiming they are fueling Chinese chip innovation. David Perdue, the new American ambassador to China, affirmed he shares Trump's priorities for US-China relations after meeting with the Chinese foreign vice minister. Turning to Australia, severe flooding has impacted eastern regions, leaving homes submerged and residents trapped. Adding to the situation, former President Trump falsely asserted that Australia is being inundated by white South Africans fleeing genocide, repeating a debunked conspiracy theory. Meanwhile, Bhutan is facing challenges with Bhutanese, Nepali refugees deported from the U.S., who have become stateless. These individuals have returned to refugee camps after being rejected by Bhutan. In the United States, a federal judge has mandated that the Trump administration retain custody of migrants deported to South Sudan. Judge Brian E. Murphy of Massachusetts issued the order to allow a review of the deportation's legality. The ruling came after emergency claims from immigration attorneys. These attorneys alleged that at least a dozen men had been deported to South Sudan on Tuesday. The men originated from various countries and had criminal convictions. Their crimes included murder and armed robbery. Meanwhile, South Sudan is grappling with economic instability exacerbated by the conflict in neighboring Sudan. The Sudanese army has threatened to close key oil export facilities. These facilities are crucial for South Sudan's oil industry, adding to the nation's economic woes. The ongoing war in Sudan directly imperils South Sudan's economic lifeline. North Korea's naval ambitions suffered a setback when sections of a newly launched 5,000-ton destroyer were crushed, causing damage during its launch ceremony. Kim Jong-un, present at the event, condemned the incident as a criminal act that insulted the nation's honor. Israel is facing increased diplomatic pressure as the United Kingdom has paused trade talks with the nation. The European Union is also threatening to review its ties with Israel amid ongoing concerns. Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee has asserted that the UK, Canada, and France are misplacing blame for the suffering in Gaza, arguing that Hamas is responsible. Turning to South Korea, conductor Chung Myung-won has achieved a historic milestone. He has been appointed as the music director of La Scala, making him the first Asian to hold this prestigious position. Chung, who has conducted at La Scala since 1989, described the appointment as a marriage to his closest friend. He also expressed his desire to honor South Korea through his new role. Qatar gifted a Boeing 747 to the Trump administration, potentially purposed as a new Air Force One, leading to ethical and security inquiries from both sides of the political spectrum. The Pentagon asserted that the acceptance of the aircraft followed all applicable federal guidelines. Pete Hegseth, U.S. Defense Secretary, played a part in the plane's acceptance. The United States is currently experiencing a surge in Bitcoin's value, driven by growing anticipation of favorable cryptocurrency legislation. However, a Republican-backed bill in Congress is also generating controversy, with critics warning it could ignite a global tax war and lead to retaliatory measures against U.S.-based foreign companies. In agricultural news, a broad coalition is pushing for tighter regulations on the herbicide atrazine, commonly used on corn, due to concerns about its potential links to cancer and birth defects. Internationally, Anu Mushtaq's Heart Lamp, translated by Deepa Basti, has won the International Booker Prize, a significant achievement considering its limited recognition in both Britain and the United States before receiving the prestigious award. Finland is preparing for potential escalation. The nation anticipates a build-up of Russian troops along their border. This preparation follows the ongoing war in Ukraine. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced new sanctions against Russian entities. These sanctions target individuals and companies involved in disinformation and cyberattacks. The measures aim to counter Russian influence operations. In Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz is facing increasing pressure regarding weapons deliveries to Ukraine. Critics argue Germany's support has been too slow and insufficient. Scholz defends his approach, emphasizing the need for coordination with allies. Meanwhile, in Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is pushing for a renewed focus on South American integration. He advocates for closer economic and political ties within the region. Lula aims to strengthen Brazil's leadership role in South America. Shifting focus to Australia, the government is considering new regulations on social media companies. These regulations are aimed at combating online misinformation and hate speech. The proposed laws could impose significant penalties for non-compliance. In the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is grappling with ongoing strikes by public sector workers. Disputes over pay and working conditions continue to disrupt essential services. Sunak insists the government is committed to fair and affordable settlements. Germany recently dismantled the far-right extremist group Last Defense Wave, arresting 5 individuals suspected of plotting attacks on migrants and political opponents. Justice Minister Stephanie Hubig stressed that the arrests of these teenagers underscore the widespread presence of right-wing extremism across all demographics. In a separate development, authorities exposed a scheme involving the procurement of visas for wealthy Chinese nationals, with individuals reportedly paying up to $760,790 to secure their entry and residency in Germany. Malaysia's aspirations to evolve from semiconductor assembly to chip design are being hampered by tariffs introduced by the Trump administration. Back home, the Malaysian government's suggestion to raise the retirement age for civil servants to 65 has drawn fire. Critics fear this change will overburden older workers and restrict employment prospects for younger individuals. The financial burden of caring for pandas has also come under examination, revealing that keeping Phu, Hua, and Feng Yai in Malaysia for 11 years cost millions of ringgit. Singapore is navigating economic headwinds, with tariff tensions with the United States potentially leading to a technical recession, despite a better-than-expected growth in the first quarter. The newly appointed cabinet under Prime Minister Lawrence Wong is being viewed as a cautious selection, leaving room for future modifications. The temporary lack of a Labour chief is noted. In other news, the National University of Singapore has apologized for discarding Yale Nuss books, triggering a petition and stirring discontent among Yale Nuss alumni. In Mexico, the escalation of cartel violence in areas near Culiacan, Sinaloa, necessitated the emergency relocation of hundreds of animals from a local refuge to a more secure coastal area, adding to the nation's unease. Mexico City experienced the shocking assassination of the personal secretary and a close advisor to the city's mayor. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador strongly condemned these killings and pledged unwavering efforts to ensure justice, emphasizing that the perpetrators, believed to be at least 4 individuals, will face the full consequences of their action. France is considering a ban on headscarves for girls under 15 in public, proposed by President Macron's party. A perilous journey across the English Channel resulted in the death of a woman and child attempting to reach Britain. In Aix-en-Provence, the estate and studio of Cézanne have reopened, honoring the artist's legacy. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government faces increasing pressure to address rising inflation rates. The housing market is showing signs of cooling after a period of rapid growth. Indigenous leaders are calling for greater federal support in addressing clean water access on reserves. Meanwhile, in Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz is navigating a complex energy crisis exacerbated by the war in Ukraine. The government is implementing measures to reduce reliance on Russian gas imports. Debate continues regarding the country's defense spending commitments within NATO. Across the Atlantic, Brazil is preparing for upcoming presidential elections amidst rising political polarization. Incumbent President Bolsonaro faces a strong challenge from former President Lula da Silva. Concerns over deforestation in the Amazon rainforest continue to draw international scrutiny. Shifting to Australia, the government is grappling with the aftermath of severe flooding in New South Wales. Recovery efforts are underway as communities assess the extensive damage. Discussions are ongoing regarding climate change policy and its impact on the country's natural resources. The skies saw some turbulence as a United Airlines flight, en route from Honolulu to Southern California, was diverted due to a bomb threat, prompting immediate safety protocols. Concurrently, another flight involving the Honolulu area, this time a Hawaiian Airlines plane, was delayed when a security concern, found inscribed on a bathroom mirror, triggered precautionary measures. The Netherlands is witnessing a remarkable revival within its Jewish community. 80 years following the devastation of World War II and the Holocaust, synagogues across the nation are once again thriving hubs of communal life and religious observance. Canada is currently evaluating whether to participate in the U.S. Golden Dome missile defense system, anticipated to be operational by the end of 2029, according to statements made by Mr. Trump. Romania has successfully navigated a rerun election, averting a potential descent into autocracy, though the nation's democratic foundations remain fragile. Turning to Oman, the country has announced that Rome will host a fifth round of nuclear negotiations between the United States and Iran, slated for Friday. Speaking of Rome, the city's Prati district houses the Omega Gym, a popular fitness center frequented by local residents, as well as priests, nuns, and monsignors from nearby Vatican City. Syria's civil war saw the Sayyida Zainab Shrine become a focal point, uniting Shiite fighters supporting President Bashar Assad. Separately, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio expressed concerns about the stability of Syria's transitional government, warning of potential collapse, renewed conflict, and national fragmentation. Philippines President Marcos has requested the resignation of all cabinet secretaries, signaling a potential government restructuring after less than ideal midterm election outcomes. In response to escalating criminal activities against South Korean citizens, including instances of theft, murder, and fraud, the Philippines plans to deploy Korean-speaking police officers to offer greater security and reassurance to the Korean community. Thailand is tightening cannabis regulations due to tourist smuggling. A Thai director won a Cannes Prize for an LGBTQ ghost story. In Mali, the repercussions of the Trump administration's decision to slash 90% of USAID's foreign aid are still being felt, most notably with the closure of the Shifan Anyai Tagni local language learning program, a program that had previously provided vital educational resources to thousands of individuals within the country. I understand. I am ready for your next request, focusing on governance, international relations, major policies, and societal trends, avoiding isolated incidents involving individuals unless they have a significant geopolitical, economic, or policy impact. Vietnam is now home to a new luxury resort and golf course developed by the Trump Organization, marking a significant investment of $1.50 billion. Eric Trump attended the groundbreaking. Separately, in a heartwarming story, an 80-year-old Vietnam veteran achieved his academic goals by graduating from South Carolina State University. Turning to the European Union, a commitment of emergency financial aid was made to Radio Free Europe. This support came after a directive from the Trump administration that threatened the news organization's existence. However, the funding offered by the EU fell short of what Radio Free Europe needed to maintain full operations. The United States is re-evaluating the classification of the Taliban as a foreign terrorist organization as part of a comprehensive review of its military withdrawal from Afghanistan in August 2021. The U.S. will also end funding for an overpass project in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, in August, creating uncertainty about the project's completion due to foreign assistance cuts enacted during President Trump's term. Furthermore, aid agencies have reported that U.S. bombing campaigns, alongside Israeli campaigns targeting the Houthis in Yemen, have harmed civilians and intensified the humanitarian crisis. Turning to Indonesia, the nation has increased its efforts to combat online pornography, removing 380,000 pieces of content. Indonesian authorities have also blocked numerous social media groups and accounts, especially those promoting incest and child pornography. Transitioning to Kenya, the country is actively pursuing increased tea exports to China. As part of this strategy, China will export tea packaging material to Kenya without taxes. Eventually, packaging firms will be established within Kenya to support the export market. The European Union is now considering its response to Hungary's announcement of a new foreign agent law. Critics view this law as a crackdown on activists and media organizations, drawing parallels to similar legislation in Russia. In China, companies are increasing their investment activities in Brazil. These investments span various sectors, including beverages, automotive, food delivery, and renewable energy. China will also export tea packaging materials to Kenya tax-free and eventually establish packaging firms there to support the export market. Meanwhile, in Yemen, aid agencies report that U.S. and Israeli bombing campaigns targeting the Houthis have caused harm to civilians, worsening the existing humanitarian crisis. Finally, Tonga has received financial assistance designated for health and economic development initiatives. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.